We're going to be looking now at early Christian art. The dates that I'm giving you include the 4th through the 8th centuries, and that's mainly the period that we have a group of items that we can actually look at and examine closely. That would also coincide with the beginning of the acceptance of Christianity, which takes place in 313 when Constantine makes it legal for Christians to actually perform their religious practices publicly. I would like you to take a look at some smart history videos for this week. They're particularly good, and the advantage of those videos is that the people are shooting them on the ground so that you can actually see the details of the objects, sometimes from the back, sometimes from the sides, but things that I can't necessarily do with my home computer. In addition, I did want you to understand why I was picking so many smart history videos. These folks are a nonprofit creating art history videos that are made free to the public, and that happens to be something that I support deeply. I even volunteer for Smart History, so a couple of my pieces are up on Smart History. So I encourage you also to support them with the idea in mind that it's nice to have information accessible to everyone and to have it accessible for free. Okay, returning to the subject of early Christian art, we really don't have any before around 200. The reason for that, we think, is that the Christians were attempting to break with the tradition of the pagans, and that would be in particular in reference to large-scale public sculptures depicting deities that were placed throughout the city. In addition to that, the Jews, and the Christians, of course, morph out of Judaism, the Jews did not approve of images. So there's a kind of awareness that it's not really a good idea, based upon the Ten Commandments at least, to actually have depictions that one might treat as idols. So it's going to take a while for the Christians to start making images that are Christian in nature and that are easy to see. When they do, these early images are largely symbolic. And that perhaps also harks back to the time when Christianity was not legal. Consequently, early Christian artists had to create images that would not be readily identified as Christian. I have one of them in the lower right for you to take a look at. You're also going to see this in Smart History. These early images are symbolic, they are simple, they are abstract, and they are optimistic, generally implying salvation and protection and comfort to the viewer. And those are things very much needed in the Roman world in the period when Rome was in decline. We're looking into the catacombs where carved images like the fish and the anchor in the lower right would have been placed. The catacombs, of course, underground burial centers and religious centers as well, rituals could have taken place here, that were cut out of the living rock, the tufa, underneath the city of Rome. It's estimated that there may have been as many as 4 million people buried in the catacombs back in the day. As you look at the catacombs in my slide at the left, you're going to see a niche right here and another one underneath it. These very narrow hallways were flanked on both sides with niches. Those niches were filled with burials, and on top of those burials, a slab would have enclosed the remains of the dead person, and it was on that slab that you could get some of the earliest of the early Christian images. These generally were symbolic, simplified, abstract images, sometimes with inscriptions giving the name of the deceased, but almost always promising the hope for a better life in the next world. Let me just show you a couple examples of these, beginning with our fish and anchor. The fish, which is still a symbol of Jesus today, and I think even you can recall, all of you can recall seeing a fish bumper sticker on somebody's car, or I love Jesus, and Jesus is shown as a fish. This derives from the Greek, and it is an acronym essentially for the name Jesus Christ. So the fish was very clearly, back in the day as well as today, associated with Jesus. So we have two fishies, and between them we have the anchor. And the anchor is referenced in a couple places in the Bible. Let me quote one of them. It's from Hebrews. That means it's Old Testament. Hebrews 6:19-20. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. In other words, the anchor itself represents a promise of comfort, security in our world here and in the next. So it is indicating that through Jesus, you can have comfort, security, and almost certainly the continuation of life in the next world. These are more, and I think you can see in the upper left what the shape of this would have been like. It would have actually fit into the niche covering the body of the dead person underneath. As we take a look at these, we can see that it is likely that the artists creating them were not the most well-paid artists. Early Christians came often from the lower ranks of society. They were drawn to Christianity because of its loving message and also because of its message of equality. They couldn't pay for the same kinds of artists that elite Romans could hire, or that the emperor could hire, for example. So we're going to see a tendency towards abstraction and perhaps not perfection in the images, and that would also apply to the writing on the surface. Okay, the image itself is very Christian. We've got a birdie right here. The bird tends to be shown as a symbol of the soul. We have the birdie with a tree. The tree is a reference to paradise. So what this suggests is that the soul of the dead person will be able to enjoy, literally feed on, the tree in the afterlife, that the bird representing the dead individual will enjoy eternal life in a kind of garden in the afterlife. The same is true in the next one. Over here again, we have a birdie, but the birdie is located now inside the tree or on top of the tree. So birdie, tree. Right next to the bird in the tree, which references our ability to enjoy paradise in the afterlife, is an image that references Jesus. It is the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd has a sheep on his shoulders, and he is surrounded by two sheep, both of them with their heads turned gently towards him. This is one of the favored ways of depicting Jesus early in the early Christian period. He is shown very much as one of us, someone who is easy to relate to, and he's dressed in plain garb of a shepherd. He's also shown in a very loving way next to his sheep, often touching or carrying those sheep. There's another one that also comes from the catacombs down here at the bottom. Here's our Good Shepherd, surrounded two sheep again, facing the Good Shepherd. The animals and the shepherd are basically enclosed in the composition, partly by trees. Each tree has a birdie in it. So again, what we have is an image that references the Good Shepherd as someone who might indeed help us to attain paradise in the afterlife. The same is going to be true for the middle image, which is a painted depiction that comes to us from the catacombs. All of these images of Jesus as Good Shepherds are not portraits. They are instead references to the nature of Jesus and symbolic depictions of him as if he were a shepherd. So it's Jesus, we usually say Jesus as Good Shepherd. These derive from ancient prototypes. The one that I have in the lower left you've seen before, and this is 6th century BCE. It is archaic Greek, and it is the calf bearer. In this case, we have a man who's carrying an animal on his shoulder, and it's very similar to what the Good Shepherd does. But in this case, the outcome for the animal would not have been as good. The image of the calf bearer is of a man who is carrying an animal for sacrifice. When the Christians adopt this, which was used throughout the centuries in Greece and in Rome, as well as in other civilizations, images of human beings bringing animals to sacrifice, When the Christians adopt this, it was a firmly recognizable subject, but they change the meaning. When that happens, the word to describe it is syncretism, which you can see at the bottom of the screen. This is taking place when an old, in particular in our case, pagan image takes on a new Christian meaning. A couple more images of Jesus as Good Shepherd, including the one figure 8-6 in our textbook, and that was from a ceiling painting located in a very small room in the catacombs. It would be possible to have religious services inside the catacombs with a very, very small group of people, and this would be one of the rooms where that would take place. I have additionally up in the right corner another image of Jesus as Good Shepherd, and we do believe these both come from the early 4th century. Let me focus on the one that you have in your book. It is shown particularly as an optimistic image, and it incorporates one of the subjects often shown in the catacombs, and that is the story not just of Jesus as Good Shepherd, but also of the story of Jonah. I think you all know the story of Jonah and the whale. You can see 3 parts of it right here in the arms of a 4-part division on the ceiling. And in one of these images, Jonah is the guy who's thrown off the ship, is swallowed by a whale, and after 3 days is thrown out of the mouth of the whale back on shore to safety. Why are we going to put that in the catacombs surrounding Jesus as Good Shepherd? Because the story of Jonah is an optimistic one that parallels the resurrection of Jesus. According to Christian tradition, Jonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days. Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days. Both of them are resurrected. And within Christianity, it's the resurrection of Jesus that is the linchpin of the religion. It is proof of Jesus' divine nature and his ability through his sacrifice to open the doors, essentially, for humans to have continuation in the afterlife. In other words, to go to heaven after they die. This is an image that was created in fresco. It was probably done very quickly, and as a result of the fresco and the speed with which the artist painted it, we end up with very abstract images that tend to quickly tell a story, simply and symbolically. One of the reasons, honestly, that these images in the catacombs particularly tend towards simplicity is because painting in the catacombs was really not a fun job. If you heard the knock on your door and it was someone asking you to come and paint in the catacombs, it wasn't a gig that you particularly wanted to engage in. The catacombs were underground, they were dark, it was difficult to work there, and there were dead people, so it smelled bad. This is not a job that a really famous artist is going to take. It's also a job that someone is going to complete as quickly as possible, and that's going to add to the simplified nature of these images, and I think the broad strokes of the brush as the artist is attempting to complete his scene in a timely manner.